Hey, how you doing? This is Adam Post, publisher of more than 1,000 comic books and marketing expert covering Bud Light. Bud Light is ruined as an executive says it will never recover, and the founder's son says it's a disgrace. Let's get into the story. Before we do, please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications. Give me a thumbs up. I really appreciate you. I'm trying to get to 30,000 subscribers, so if you can subscribe, please do subscribe. Coming from Fox News, ad executive doesn't see how Bud Light recovers from sales crash. Americans spoke with their pocketbooks. Well, we're seeing one of the first casualties of the new economy. Tim Cramer told Fox and Friends, "I'd like how he put it that this is the new economy. People are starting to hold companies accountable for the nonsense that they pull." After Americans spoke with their wallets against Bud Light in response to the beer maker's partnership with transgender influencer Dylan Mulvaney, one advertising industry executive believes this is an example of why consumers are tired of politics being pushed on them by companies. Mosaic advertising owner Tim Cramer joined Fox and Friends to discuss how American consumers are done with politics and wokeness pushed by brands. Quote, "We're seeing one of the first casualties of the new economy, the Bidenomics, diversity and equity and inclusion. We call them the deadheads, DED, diversity, equity. We drop off the inclusion, but we call them deadheads because everything that they touch," Trump says it best, I think, "turns to crap." And that's what we're seeing here. Cramer said it cost Anheuser-Busch big when they incorporated woke politics into their advertising. Quote, "It cost Anheuser-Busch, it cost InBev $27 billion in market value." That's if you add up all the value of all their individual stock in their public company. If you add it all up, because their stock has gone down, it's down like $27 billion. And a $400 million loss in real revenue to realize that people just want to drink their beer without a debate, and they do not want to have a message shoved down their throat. The $400 million number he's using is this past quarterly report from Anheuser-Busch. They explained they lost $390 million from the prior year's sales in North America. And they say that Bud Light is really the reason that they lost that revenue. But in addition to that, they had tremendous additional expenses, definitely in the hundreds of millions of dollars, but they didn't give us exactly what that number is. Cramer said Americans use their pocketbooks to send a clear message to brands and argued consumers are becoming increasingly frustrated by politics. Quote, "The way that they can speak is if they can't go to the streets and rant and rave in the streets, then they'll do it with their pocketbook. They'll do it with their wallet." And that's exactly what they've done here. We've seen this coming for years. We stopped working with liberal woke companies starting back in 2009. And by 2014, we had, in fact, on our website, started saying we will only work with conservative brands because we saw where this was going, and we saw it as a loser back in 2009. "I don't see how they get out of this," said Cramer. Anheuser-Busch InBev recently announced that it laid off hundreds of workers, just under 400 of them so far. But none of those people that they laid off are the people that make the beer. They admit they've lost about 30% of their market for their beer. It's going to be worse than 30%. It could be as much as 50%. However, the layoffs they had were all people in marketing and administrative offices. None of the people yet that actually make the beer. We know there's going to probably be, unfortunately, a couple of thousand people they're going to have to lay off that actually make the beer once the new sales orders come in reflecting their last terrible sales period. Brendan Whitworth, CEO of Anheuser-Busch, the world's largest brewer, said the company did not make the decision to cut staff lightly, but was prioritizing its, quote, future long-term success, the Wall Street Journal reported. Quote, "While we never take these decisions lightly, we want to ensure that our organization continues to be set for future long-term success," Anheuser-Busch said. "These corporate structure changes will enable our teams to focus on what we do best, brewing great beer for everyone." Whitworth clarified the layoffs included corporate and marketing roles at U.S. offices in St. Louis, New York, and Los Angeles. It did not impact brewery and warehouse staff, the company said. But unfortunately, it will impact those people. If they're selling 30% less beer at a minimum, it's probably much worse. Of course, they're going to have to lay off some massive number of employees. It's A horrendous story. They have 19,000 total employees. So if they lose 30% of their business, are they going to lay off 30% of their employees? It's probably not going to be that bad, but it could be as bad as 10%. We'll have to see what happens. I do like how this guy Kramer referred to this as the new economy, where people are going to hold companies accountable and they're not just going to give them business based on prior brand relationships, especially not when people are pushing a woke agenda. Coming from Fox News, Anheuser-Busch Air says ancestors would be rolling over in their grave over Bud Light's Dylan Mulvaney ad. Billy Bush said he believes his ancestors would be disappointed in Bud Light's ad campaign with Dylan Mulvaney. Anheuser-Busch Air Billy Bush blasted Bud Light over the controversy stemming from its brief partnership with transgender influencer Dylan Mulvaney. Bud Light faced intense criticism after announcing in the spring that it was partnering with Mulvaney in a campaign aimed at inclusiveness that included Mulvaney's face on Bud Light cans. Well, that is not completely accurate. They did do a partnership deal with Mulvaney at Anheuser-Busch. The idea was to associate Dylan Mulvaney with Bud Light, supposedly to bring in younger drinkers, but also with the idea of changing their fratty, immature culture, according to Alyssa Heinerschied, who is apparently no longer with the company. The first promotion they did with Dylan Mulvaney was back in February. It wasn't really noticed. It was a small thing, but it did date back to February. Then on April 1st, they had Dylan Mulvaney's next promotion come out, which included a picture of Dylan Mulvaney's face on a Bud Light can, which Mulvaney, Bud Light, Anheuser-Busch, no one explained that Dylan Mulvaney wasn't the new face of Anheuser-Busch or the new face of Bud Light. No one knew what was going on. We've not gotten a straight explanation for that. I don't know whether Dylan Mulvaney was supposed to be showing that can, or if it was just a personal gift, or if it was something they wanted Dylan Mulvaney to show. It's a little hard to believe that as a multi-billion-dollar company, if they wanted to roll out Dylan Mulvaney's face as the new face of Bud Light, that they would have given Mulvaney a can like that and had Mulvaney introduce it as opposed to having the company introduce it. It really makes me think it actually was a gift to Mulvaney that wasn't expected to be shared with the general public. But we may never know, because the Bud Light people, the Anheuser-Busch people, really won't openly criticize Mulvaney. They won't tell their customers the truth, so no one knows what's going on. Bud Light faced intense criticism after announcing in the spring that it was partnering with Mulvaney in a campaign aimed at inclusiveness. In an interview with TMZ on Friday, Bush told Harvey Levin, who is gay, not that there's anything wrong with that he believes his ancestors would be disappointed in the Dylan Mulvaney ad campaign. Quote, "I think my family, my ancestors, would have rolled over in their graves," Bush said. They believed that transgender, gays, that sort of thing was all a very personal issue. They loved this country because it's a free country and people are allowed to do what they want. But it was never meant to be on a beer can and never meant to be pushed in people's faces. I love that this guy Bush is just open about being honest about what he thinks the founders would have thought of this ridiculous promotion, and he's just telling the truth the way that he sees it. The TMZ host pointed out that the reason behind the ad campaign was inclusiveness, and Bush was asked about his response to the public's reaction to an Instagram post featuring Mulvaney and the can. Quote, "I think people who drink beer, I think they're your common folk. I think they're the blue-collar worker who goes and works hard every single day," Bush said. The last thing they want pushed down their throat or to be drinking is a beer can with that kind of message on it. I don't think that's what they're looking for. They want their beer to be truly American, truly patriotic, as it always has been. Truly America's beer, which Bud Light was and probably isn't any longer. When pressed on why he does not believe the beer is American anymore, Bush said he does not think the audience drinking beer, quote, "is into transgenders. People who drink beer care about wholesome things." Bush added that he believes beer drinkers are into patriotism and think that certain things should be kept private. But Levin, the host from TMZ, responded that he thinks the controversy Bud Light found itself in after the ad campaign was announced was rooted in prejudice against transgender people. Quote, absolutely it's prejudice, Levin said. Look, I remember my dad telling me stories that there were bars in LA that used to have signs that said, no dogs, no Jews. So there's been a history of prejudice in the country. People get over certain things. It's happened to Jews. It's happened to black people. It's happening to gay people. And it's happening to transgender people. So to me, it is absolutely prejudice. Bush replied, well, I just think prejudice against Jews, against black people, those kinds of things are a totally different deal. I have to agree with Billy Bush. It's a totally different level. It's a totally different deal. The fact that there was prejudice against black people, prejudice against Jews, there's prejudice against everyone. Let me know what you think of all this in the comments below. Do you agree with Billy Bush that the founders of Bud Light, the founders of Anheuser-Busch, would not like this Dylan Mulvaney promotion? They would not want to be part of pushing a political agenda on the face of beer cans. But beyond that, once customers were upset, there's no way that the founders of this beer would have not responded and been honest and been direct with the customers to tell them, hey, it's not a big promotion. It's not the face of our beer. It's just a one-time thing. And they never intended to have Dylan Mulvaney be the face of Bud Light. And they apologized for upsetting customers. Let me know what you think of all this in the comments below. Always love to see your ideas. Please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications. Give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you again soon with another video. And if I don't see you, I will miss you.